All right, guys, it's Husseini, and we're going to look at the P. Diddy indictment. So I just want to make one thing clear from the outset. Regardless of the title of the video, it says why P. Diddy is going to be found not guilty if he, in fact, did have minors involved, any type of SA, any type of crime, then I obviously want him to be found guilty. I'm not advocating for a not guilty verdict, but I'm just looking at the indictment for what it is and what are the contents of it, right? I'm not looking at it going, oh my God, I hope that he gets found this, that, and the other. I'm looking at it and saying, let's kind of give it a rational, objective assessment. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is because there's so many allegations that have been made right now. There's two parts to this case. Um, Technically, just one, the indictment, but you have the allegations brought on by the Busby law firm. Okay, this is an attorney in Houston who pretty much put up a hotline for victims that were abused or essayed by Diddy to call in and get representation, right, for lawsuits. This is a civil type of trial, okay? Then you have the indictment, which is the criminal federal RICO case that's brought on by the Southern District of New York. And that is what Diddy is on trial for. So I'm going to specify what the indictment includes. I'm going to go through it. And then I'm also going to just point out some things here and there that we should keep pretty much in our minds while we're observing this go down. So, one thing I want to address is the fact that as of now, there are no minors involved in the indictment. We don't see that in the indictment. We do see everything else, though, right? We see sexual assault, abuse, verbal and physical. We see trafficking. These are all the alleged crimes that are in the indictment. So we're going to go through them and let's just jump right into it. Okay, so this is the 14-page indictment. It's sealed indictment, but obviously you can find it on Google. And this is brought on by the Southern District of New York. Now, there's three counts, okay? So the first count is racketeering, conspiracy. I think the other one is trafficking. Let's see if we could find it. And by the way, this is the first time I'm going through this in detail. I've skimmed through this very briefly. Yep, so trafficking by fraud, force, coercion. Okay, victim one. So who's that? And then count three, transportation to engage in prostitution. Okay, so a few things to note here. For decades, for decades, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy Diddy, the Diddler, PD, aka Love, the defendant, abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, he relied on employees, resources, and influence. Resources could be his businesses, his money, his fame. He created a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson. What's that about? Bribery and obstruction of justice. So, one thing you want to note here, whenever you see verbiage like this, criminal enterprise whose members did something to further the organization, you're looking at typically a racketeering or a RICO case, as they call it. It is a federal indictment. So the sex trafficking, if he's flying people in from other states, paying them, having some type of agreement with them for the purposes of sex, that's going to be trafficking. Okay, the defendant operated his business headquartered in various times at Manhattan, Los Angeles, under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, Combs Global, et cetera, right? So pretty much what they're saying here is, hey, this is a federal case, it's a RICO case, and we know that these different businesses, different entities, different organizations, Diddy was using to further this criminal enterprise. I do want to point something out that now that I'm actually reading this, sticks out to me. A RICO case, especially when they talk about a criminal enterprise, like where's the enterprise? Where are the people, right? This indictment only has one defendant, Combs. But if you look at a case, let's contrast it with the YSL case, you see that there are 20 defendants, right? Some of them may be snitching, or some of them may be testifying, cooperating, whatever you want to use. But here, there's only one defendant, and everybody else is a victim, allegedly. Okay. So, defendant operated his business headquartered in various times. So, the reason why they're pointing out all these different locations, or even saying Combs Global, they're trying to build the fact that he was operating all over the world. Here are all the organizations in order to further this criminal organization. All right. So number 3, at all times relevant to this indictment, the defendant engaged in persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse towards women and other individuals. The abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of the pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male, and here's the kicker, commercial sex workers, which is illegal, and which he flew across state lines, allegedly. Right? Because if you're just orchestrating performances of sex, highly orchestrated, that's not illegal. But when you talk about commercial sex workers being involved, when you talk about physical and sexual abuse, and when you talk about manipulating women to participate, that's a crime. Manipulation, that's fraud. There was a Netflix special, maybe it was just a show, I don't remember, but it was a couple of years ago. It was about a kid. He was like in his 20s who would fly around the world and get unsuspecting women to pretty much give up their life savings to him, right? He had this elaborate story about how he was some billionaire or heir to a billionaire, and they're going through business dealings, and his account is locked up because he's traveling or something crazy. And the women would think, okay, well, he's a billionaire. I'll just, loan him 50 grand and he'll give it back to me. But in reality, he was taking the money from these women, and he had romantic relationships with them, which is why they trusted him and gave him these funds. That's manipulation. That was a crime. So you can't manipulate people to have sex with you. Okay, number 4. We're still on count 1. Physical abuse. The defendant was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least 2009 and continuing years. Combs assaulted women. Boom. So that's a crime, right? There's been a lot of talk about this indictment, right? There's people saying, oh, well, there's no minors involved. Oh, there's no rape involved. He's just guilty of having orgies, right? Which is not a crime. Having an orgy is not a crime. But no, there is assault allegations in here. Among other things, he was striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. So they're talking about him striking, punching, dragging. So this is directly corresponding to a video that was released, or leaked rather, from a hotel back in 2016 when him and Cassie were on a floor that Diddy rented out. Cassie's trying to leave. Diddy comes out in a towel by the elevator and does exactly what this indictment is saying. That was one leaked video with Cassie in it. I'm curious to see who's them, right? Who's them? Do they have more victims portrayed on video? These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel. So that video, I feel, is a catalyst to this indictment. One thing to remember, guys, is when you have an indictment like this isn't the FBI, watching a leaked video and then going out the next day and making an arrest. They do their due diligence. They build a case for years. When you think about the mob cases back when Giuliani was mayor of New York, those were decades of investigations, multi-generational investigators passing data along, and then eventually the FBI going in within the course of a couple of years and arresting hundreds of mafia members, right? That's why they say Giuliani took down the mob, is because he spearheaded that and brought it to a close, closed the chapter. So this isn't something that happens overnight. So The rumors out there about how the leaked essay video or the leaked abuse of Combs in that hotel room led to this indictment. That may be a part of it, but it's not the sole reason why this happened. This is an investigation that they've been doing for years, I suspect. Okay, so the Combs Enterprise. So this is just going to define what the Combs Enterprise is and what the purposes were. We already touched upon that earlier, but members of this Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in other activities such as trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution, coercion. It keeps going on and on. Kidnapping, arson. I wonder what that is. That's Diddy trying to blow up a car. Again, involving Cassie and her boyfriend at the time. Yeah. Again, number 7 here. So the Combs Enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associate. So, guys, we don't see another defendant in this case, right? We see one defendant. It's Diddy. So I'm curious as to why they're using this language. Is there going to be some type of superseding indictment that's going to come after this that they don't want to tell us, but they know about? Because for it to have leadership, for it to have members, for it to have associates, this is reminiscent of the YSL case. So who are the other people involved? And again, we're going to go through the indictment, but there may be some answers or some hints to that in the civil lawsuit that the Busby law firm has brought on against Diddy. Purposes of the Combs Enterprise. Again, further the reputation and activities of the organization. I think these are more of just definitions here. Means and methods. How did Diddy go about facilitating these so-called freak-offs? How did he go about facilitating these SAs and abuse? Here we are, members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff. Who's the security staff? Are they talking about Gene? Who are they talking about here? Household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms, stocking hotel rooms with 1,000 bottles of baby oil, and in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances. They subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. All right, guys, so we're still on count 1 here. Now let's get to count 2. So count 2 is sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. All right, so when we look at count 2, okay, so from 2009 up to 2018, Southern District of New York and elsewhere, the defendant in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person. They're covering all bases. They're making sure they got every verb that he could have done, put it in the indictment. Knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that the means of force, threats or of force, fraud, and coercion, as described in Title 18, United States Code section, blah, 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 would cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act. And attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim 1 they're saying, which I'm assuming is Cassie, aid and abet and willfully cause victim 1 to engage in commercial sex acts knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim 1 was engaging in these acts as a result of force or fraud. So it seems like count 2 specifically was engineered for the benefit and justice for Cassie, allegedly, right? Because everything that they're talking about here, it looks like that, you have to understand, she was with this guy for years, right? He brought her into the music industry. He gave her record deals. He gave her money, a place to live, like pretty much took care of her. That's where the manipulation comes in. in exchange for these forced acts, right? Essays, allegedly. So I think this is tailored directly to her. And the other thing, guys, is that there is only a victim one in this indictment, right? So they're mentioning other victims and associates, right? So they're mentioning people that committed crimes and were victims of crime, but they're not specifying. They're only using it in the language very vaguely, or not vaguely, but generally in this indictment. So I'd be interested to see, maybe is there a superseding indictment that comes out that specifies victim two, victim three, not in name, but in number, and also with the associates of the so called criminal enterprise, right? Who are those people? Again, very, I don't want to say odd, but it's just maybe the first time I've seen a federal RICO case that involves this type of crime, this level of crime, with only one defendant. YSL didn't have that. Even in the Melly case, you were seeing different associates, right? There were people that aided and abetted Melly getting away in the car. Uh, that's why you have, what do they call them? They call them snitches, but they also call them, what do you call these people? What is it? A cooperating testifier? I don't know, but whoever you have in the courtroom with helping the government, I think it's a cooperating witness, is what they call it. That's who you had in the Melly case. In this, you don't even have that. Again, on this indictment side, we're going to get to the civil cases here in a minute. Okay, so count three, we're going to say that's for Cassie. Was that count three or count two? That was count three, sorry. Okay, count two. Oh, no, that was count two. So what's count three? Transportation to engage. Okay, from 2009 to 2024 till today, the defendant knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce globally with the intent to engage in prostitution. Okay. Willfully caused the transportation of female victims. Again, we're seeing this language, the victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce. So are the sex workers victims? Does it say here? I'm assuming they are, but I'm going to assume that they are because they're lumping it in with these female victims. Somebody goes, no, they're suspects. Okay. Okay, now here's the other thing, guys. This is probably one of the few times where a defendant has put up a very thorough, exorbitant bail package and has been denied bail on 3 occasions, right? Everybody that has been involved with this type of case previously, whether you talk about Harvey Weinstein, I believe Bill Cosby, they all got bail. But with Combs, he did not receive that. Why is that? I'd be curious to know why that is. So I think the most obvious reason is because he has the means and the methods to evade prosecution, right? He has private jets, he has millions, billions of dollars, he has contacts, he has, like they said in the indictment, right, a global enterprise, global businesses where he can maybe have someone in his network, get him out of the country, get him to a place that has no extradition laws. So that's why I suspect they denied his bail. If you follow his private jet that he would charter, a lot of these guys, they have private jets, and what they do is they'll charter them for flights that are not their own, right? Meaning they'll rent it out. Like if you had a car on Turo, right? You're renting it out, someone else is paying for it. They give you a fee for renting it out. That's what these guys do with their jets. But you could track jets using their tail numbers. And if you look at Diddy's jet, the night before or the day of his arrest, his jet was spotted in Teterboro, or it landed in New Jersey, right? So remember, he was staying in New York in an attempt to turn himself in. and his jet shows up in New Jersey, and then the same day or the next day, the FBI comes in and arrests him. So that was very suspicious to them, maybe a coincidence. If you take into account that he's renting it out, you have somebody that's flying from Jersey, you can't control that. They can rent it out and fly wherever they want. That doesn't mean he was going to evade. And I don't think he was, but that could have been used against him as well. So maybe that's why he didn't get that bail approved. Just a thought. Okay. So now I want to go to the Busby law firm. This is the civil side of this episode. All right. So this is Tony Busby. This is his law firm based out of, I believe, Houston, Texas. And this is the guy that put up a Diddy abuse hotline. That's literally what they called it. So you could call this number. It goes to a Diddy abuse hotline. They ask you to testify, or not testify, but record your experience of alleged SA abuse concerning Diddy. Okay. So this is the guy doing it, Tony Busby. That's his team of first class lawyers right there. And the first 24 hours of this hotline being up, guys, they said they had 12,000 calls. Okay, that's a lot of people. Out of that, they vetted 3,000, and out of that, now they're representing 120 people. So this guy is the real deal. He's the same guy that was spearheading the BP oil spill, for all of you old enough to remember that. And we're going to take a look at his press conference. Can you hear my dog snoring in the background? He's a 130-pound French
Hello,
Mastiff.
everyone. My name is Tony Busby. I'm a lawyer here in Houston. I'm licensed in Texas and in New York. And I'll introduce other members of our team as they speak. As many of you know, our law firm has been at the forefront of some of the most important litigation in the United States. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. We like the tough cases. We thrive in the complicated cases. We've handled over the last 25 years some very big and very important cases. I believe that this one may surpass them all. There are many facets to this. The conduct we will describe today occurred over more than 20 years. There are many people and many entities involved. And we're going to follow this evidence wherever it takes us. We will find the silent accomplices. We will expose the enablers who enabled this conduct behind closed doors. We will pursue this matter, no matter who the evidence implicates. These brave victims who have stepped forward deserve nothing less. The biggest secret in the entertainment industry, that really wasn't a secret at all, has finally been revealed to the world. The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward. Our team has had, at this point, more than 3,285 individuals contact us, with people claiming So notice how matter-of-fact he is, right? He's saying that for 20 years, I know for a fact that this abuse was going on. I got victims, 3,000 of them at this point, that are going to corroborate this. This is a well-kept secret. That's not a secret at all. Everybody knows it. So he's going to go into why, who. Notice he said everybody who's involved, we're keeping them accountable. We're going to go after them. He's talking about big companies. He's talking about not only Diddy, he's talking about the whole enterprise. People claiming to have been victimized by Sean Combs. After vetting, we now represent 120 individuals who intend to bring civil claims in civil court against Sean Diddy Combs, as well as claims against many other individuals and entities that we will name as defendants as we file these individual cases.
As your representative, I worked across the aisle with Republicans to pass public safety legislation and fund our law enforcement and first responders.
Good job.
And you should know, to the extent the clients feel comfortable, we also intend to make these individuals available to the authorities, specifically to the FBI. And you should also know a few of them have already been spoken to by the FBI. Now, before we discuss the nature of the claims and claimants themselves, Let me comment on the large volume of calls we have received since our first announcement. Even before the indictment of Sean Combs, we had received a small volume of calls and had screened a handful of cases. After the indictment of Sean Combs and the announcement that we were pursuing these claims, the floodgates opened. People who wouldn't otherwise, for a variety of reasons, are now stepping forward to make their voices heard and to pursue justice.
So one thing I'm going to mention about this is when you have something like this, a national hotline where anybody could call in, you have to understand there's billions of dollars, okay, at the bottom of this pool. And naturally, a lot of people are going to want a piece of that. Some of them are victims. Some of them never met Diddy. Some of them have nothing to do with this. But that's just the nature of these types of hotlines, right? You got a lot of prank calls. That's what this Tony Busby character was saying as well, right? He had a lot of prank callers call him up and, try to be funny and blah, 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 blah. So these guys have to vet thousands and thousands of calls coming in. Some of them are real, some of them are fake, some of them are nonsense, some of them are pranks, and they have to figure out who's legitimate. Out of those thousands of calls, they said 120 people are legit.
But no, most of these people are scared. They fear backlash in their communities. They fear backlash in their own families. They are afraid of retaliation from the perpetrators and their associates. They are rightly afraid for their own personal safety. I expect that through this process, many powerful people will be exposed. Many dirty secrets will be revealed. We know what we are potentially up against. And as is always the case in situations like this, when a celebrity is involved, people can be downright mean and nasty. You'd be shocked at the length fans will go, no matter the evidence, to the contrary, to defend celebrities they love. And there's a reason for this word.
Now, he mentioned that there are a lot of people that are going to be exposed. There was an interview after this press conference with Piers Morgan where Tony Busby mentioned that he has and he's seen documentation with alleged perpetrators in accordance with Diddy. When asked who that was, he said, I can't disclose that, but there's one name in particular that's bigger than Diddy. And that got everybody speaking. We don't know who that is. He said that there's a tape of somebody with Diddy. I don't remember if it was a victim or what, but there's something he's saying shocking that he has that he has in his possession that if released would shock everybody because of the stature of the celebrity, who apparently is bigger than Diddy. A lot of people were saying it's Justin Bieber, but I would think Bieber would be a victim, allegedly, right? Not a suspect.
Fans. They're fanatics. I've personally already been threatened multiple times on social media. When I agreed to pursue this, I expected as much. This isn't my first rodeo. But victims who step forward to have their voices heard should not be subjected to that kind of conduct. They should not be targeted. I want to say this, and I want to be clear about it. Although we are vetting each call as stringently as we can, I always start with the mindset that I believe victims. I believe victims because I understand the tremendous courage it takes to step forward. So if you're watching this, please hear me. If you're out there and you have been victimized, you are not alone. There is a great strength in numbers.
So he's pretty much, making it a safe space for all the victims. He's like, hey, I'm here to represent you. I've done it before. Call me. We're going to win. We're going to get you the justice you deserve. Notice how this person over here, I don't know if this person works for him or is a representative or a victim or what, but she's wearing purple. He's wearing a hue of purple pink, but she's wearing purple. That's that's a color for victims of abuse, kind of like how pink is the color for patients of cancer, breast cancer. So, he's all about it. And you can't see it in this frame, but he's got the number plastered behind him for everybody to see on TV. You can call it and you get that Diddy abuse hotline. So, I want to just kind of talk about the differences between this and the actual indictment, because this is what this video was predicated on in the first place. So let's just kind of draw a line between the two and figure out what's actually going on. Okay, so the civil lawsuits are brought on by Tony Busby and his law firm, right? The federal indictment is brought on by the Southern District of New York. That's the document that we saw in the beginning. One thing to be clear of, we didn't get into it with the press conference, but Tony Busby did mention that there were certainly minors involved. And if that's the case, guys, guilty. There's no excuse for that. There's no justification for that. You should not be breaking the law, and just morally, like, how do you do that to kids, right? You can't do that. You can't do that to anybody, let alone kids. So if that's in fact the case, then guilty, right? SA, abuse, guilty, right? We're not trying to make justifications or trying to talk out of crimes committed by Diddy. What we are trying to do, though, is at this point in time, and we don't know, right? There may be a superseding indictment that comes in a week or a month. We don't know what's going to happen as far as extra evidence. But from what I've seen so far, I don't see any minors in the indictment. We definitely do see SA. We definitely do see allegations of abuse. So we have to take those into consideration. But we also only see one victim as of now, and we see one defendant. I'm not seeing, one of the things that had me scratching my head with this indictment was, what was the crime here, right? Was the crime just having orgies, wild sexual encounters, experiences? That's what it seemed like in the beginning, right? We didn't know what the crime was. But the crime is abuse. The crime is SA. The crime is sex trafficking. The crime is hiring prostitutes, giving out drugs to people unsuspectingly, having drugs in the first place, having guns, which we didn't touch on, but there were guns involved with not scratched off, because you can't scratch off a serial number, but you can cut it out or grind it down on a firearm. So there was that. So there are a lot of allegations being made here that are in fact crimes. Now the question is going to be, what evidence is going to be provided for such crimes? The defense is saying that Diddy, yes, did fly people in. I don't know if they said he paid anybody, but they did say that everybody was a willing participant. Everybody knew what they were signing up for. And long story short, these were just wild, crazy parties. Okay, that's what the defendant's lawyer, Diddy's lawyers, are saying. Sorry, the defendant, right? Not the plaintiff. The plaintiff would be, we don't know, right? The plaintiff we know is victim one. We don't know that victim one is going to be testifying. I suspect it's Cassie, but because of the circumstances under which that videotape of the assault in the hotel against Cassie was released, or leaked rather, Combs's attorneys are now trying to suppress that evidence, meaning they don't want that evidence to be taken into consideration in front of a jury. The problem with that is the whole world's seen that video now, so it's too late. Can't really take that back. Yeah, you could hold it out of evidence, but everyone's going to have that in the back of their mind. Now, the other question is, if they don't present that in court and they were not allowed to bring that piece of evidence up, what evidence do they have against that count? I think it was 2, right? I feel like that Cassie tape is what's holding this case together, but I'd be very interested to see what evidence is brought in front of a jury when it comes time for trial, because at this point it just seems like it would be Diddy's word against, I don't even know who the victims are, right? We only have one victim and we're assuming it's Cassie, and Cassie on the video is not essayed. We don't know if she's drugged. We don't know. The only thing we know for certain is she was physically assaulted, and that's a crime. But the question is it a federal crime? Is it a RICO? Is it a, what is it? So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We're going to stay on top of it. And I'm hopefully going to try to do some more videos on a more consistent basis. But for now, that's all I got. Thanks. See you later.